Hi everyone, this is lesson 2 from the Chiasmus class for summer 2020. We're going to be diving into the Old Testament, the first half of it today. So first off, just some housekeeping. The color coding skill that we're going to use to highlight Chiasmus this semester is going to be the rainbow. We're going to have red at the apex and work our way out from there. And that way, when we have large chiasmus, such as the ones found in like Alma, we're going to just repeat the rainbow. So we go from red all the way out and then start over at A with black and then start red again and work our way out through the rainbow. So if you don't have any of these colors, just skip that one that you don't have for the next one, or maybe you could replace like an indigo with a pink or whatever you'd like to do. But that's just the general color scale that we're going to be using in this class. All right, so typically in all of the scriptures, you'll find overarching chiasmus, the macro chiasmus, except for in the Old Testament. I'm going to explain why it's a little bit different here. The Old Testament as we know it today is not organized how the Hebrews would have had it. So our Old Testament comes from like the Council of Nicaea, where they organized it in a different way. But the Hebrew Old Testament is called the Tanakh, and that comes from, it's an acronym meaning the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. So the law, the prophets, and the writings. That's the three sections of their Old Testament. So in the law, the Torah, they have the 5 books of Exodus, and those do have an overarching chiasmus, as well as chiasmus within each individual book. Within the Nevi'im, the prophets, they have the former, the latter, and the 12 minor prophets, and each of those have different overarching macrochiasmus as well as micro. In the Ketuvim, they have the 3 poetic books, so Psalms, almost every single psalm has big and little chiasmus in it. Proverbs, Job is an amazing chiastic structure to it. The 5 Megillot and the other books, all in the Ketuvim. There was an amazing class at Education Week where it took the question, why didn't the Jews recognize Christ at the time of his coming? And it was taught by Matthew Gray. And anyway, it was very enlightening to see that there was lots of different groups with lots of different expectations of a Messiah. And some of them didn't believe in the prophets. They only believed in the law, the Torah. I believe it was Sadducees. They didn't really take into account that some of those prophets were called of God, and so they just kind of discredited them and things. So the Tanakh, the Old Testament of the Hebrews, is very interesting in the fact that a modern Jew is going to take different parts of the Tanakh and read different ways into it. And so the chiastic structure is very important that we study it as it was back then, organized back then, in order to see the chiastic structures. So let's move on to enrichment section G. This is one of the best overviews of Hebrew poetry and Hebrew literary styles that I've ever found. So here's the link to it. I encourage you to go and read it thoroughly. They talk about parallelism, chiasmus, figurative imagery, and dualism. In the Institute manual, in the explanation for dualism, there's some great examples of how Christ would use one scripture or one parable to mean multiple different things, to have dualistic qualities to it. So I highly encourage that you go and read that. We covered it extensively in class. And then another great website that I found just this last week was the chiasmusexchange.com. So they have accounted for most of the chiasmus, especially the microchiasmus, verse by verse kind of thing that happens in the Old Testament and New Testament. I would encourage you, as you're studying, if you find yourself needing to kind of check your work and see if you found a chiasmus or not, go to there. They've it's a great extensive resource for it, and it's also user submitted, so you can submit your own. If you find one that's not on the website, you can submit it, and it'll be on there. So for this class, I designed it so that it would be heavily class participation. And so what we did in class was I gave a printout of this slide to everyone. We cut it up with scissors and then try to rearrange it. So this is out of order, and so we're going to reconstruct this group of scriptures. So there's 4 or 5 verses here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, there's more than that. So there's 7 verses here. And you're going to rearrange those in a chiastic structure. So the hint on this one is that both fins are positive, meaning that as one goes out, it comes back the same way, not with negative meanings or things to it. So the trick is to find the apex and then work back from there. So right here, if you want to pause it, if you want no help at all, I'm going to give some hints and then pause again, and then I'm going to give the answer of it reconstructed. And I'm going to do that with all of these slides. So with this one, the hints is that both are positive, and here is the apex. The apex says, "And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of the Pharaoh." That's the apex. Now we want to work back from there. So take your remaining things and find similarities in between two. So you're going to want to match up pairs of clippings there. The next one, as we move backward from the apex, so this one's going to be highlighted in orange. The top one is, "And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness." And then the bottom one that matches it says, "Who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians." Now see if you can find the remaining 4 and what order they should be in. A big hint throughout all of these is to look at punctuation. You want to make sure that the verse would read how it would in the scriptures. So obviously it's not going to start with a halfway through a sentence like the "and all the travail that had come upon them by the way." That's not going to be the very first one, because a verse wouldn't start off like that. All right, so moving forward to the answer. Here it is in its full chiastic structure. We see that the apex is there in red, and then we move out to orange, then yellow, then green, moving down the rainbow. This is found in Exodus 18, 7 through 12. Now that was kind of tricky because we're starting to get into it. In the class, in person, it was very difficult to reconstruct scriptures that we're unfamiliar with and that don't have a particular cadence. One thing that we found a lot was that certain phrases were repeated more than just in their matching part of the fin. For example, in the orange, you'll see the hand of the Egyptians, and then in the bottom orange, you'll see the hand of the Egyptians, but you also see the hand of the Egyptians in the apex. So it's tricky when you're finding 3 like things or 4 like things to say, okay, now where does that fit in? So the whole point of this reconstructing of chiasmus is to find like phrases. That's the whole point of what I'm trying to get at, is when you're taking 2 different things, 2 different blocks of words, try to find like phrases. And they don't always come out as word for word verbatim, but for example, on the yellow here, "The Lord delivered them, and the Lord is greater than all gods." So it's describing characteristics of the Lord, but they're a little bit different, but they're the same in and of itself. So moving on, we'll get more experience as we go through some of these others. So this is the next one. Go ahead and print this out and cut it up, and we're going to try to find out how it fits together. This one is very tricky because it's not our normal chiasmus, but the apex is a parallelism in and of itself. So basically the structure of this one is A, B, B, A. It just happens to have a C associated with each of the B's. If you want to stop here and take a look at it, I'll start giving some hints now. So it begins with I am the Lord and ends with I am the Lord. And then B and C, these are kind of tricky because, I mean, they could go either way, B and C, B and C. The matching ones are thou shalt not hate and thou shalt not avenge. Those are going to be matching B's. So let's look at the answer here. So I'm going to cut this part out, this long pause. All right, so if we see here, we are not highlighting in our normal manner because the apex, everything there would be red. So I kind of skipped red and did B and C as blue or yellow and orange. This comes from Leviticus 19, 16 through 18. Now let's look at our next one. This one's going to be more of a longer chiasmus. So we're going to reconstruct this one. It goes all the way from A to E. So if you want to stop here, print it out. I'm going to start giving hints. The two fins are opposite. So there's going to be some things that you shall do and some things that you shall not do, kind of a thing, on the two opposite fins. Now, if you want some more hints, the apex is ye shall do my judgments. The next branch out is in their ordinances is the top D, and the bottom D is and keep mine ordinances. Now see if you can figure out the next three from there. Now let's go and look at the answer. So just like our previous one, it might have been two previous, it starts and ends with I am the Lord. You're going to see that a lot throughout the Old Testament. It's not so common in the Book of Mormon and Doctrine and Covenants, but very heavily in the Old Testament. And another hint, as we're going throughout all of these, is Christ is usually at the apex or as the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. So a lot of times you'll be able to pull that out as kind of hints. It's either at the beginning and end or at the very apex. So you see we highlighted the apex in red, moved out to orange, yellow, green, and then finally to blue in Leviticus 18, 1 through 5. So now we're going to go to Psalms. This one was pretty tricky in class as well. So we're going to reconstruct this ABCBA. So this one, for hints, this one has dual positive fins. And then if you want a further hint, the apex is, for thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thy Holy One to see corruption. Now, if we work our way back from there, pay attention to punctuation and how it would read. Because the psalm is going to be very poetic. It's going to flow very nicely. So rearrange those in a way that's pleasing, I guess. All right, and for the answer, all right, and then let's move on to another psalm. All right, this one if you want to go ahead and print it out, I'm going to start giving hints. So this one is both a positive and a negative fin. Then for the middle two apexes here, the first one is, and he shall be like a tree. And the second one, the bottom one, is the ungodly are not so, but are as the chaff. So we have the tree and the chaff that are both plants, but one is something desirable and something that is not. So then we move back from there, and we have the law of the Lord and the judgment that are similar, and then the way of the sinners and the way of the ungodly. All right. So what do we learn about this doctrinally from the correct order of it? We learn that the law gives us sufficient roots to bring forth fruit. Those that have no fruit shall perish, and from not having the law of the Lord. That's from Psalm number 1. It's interesting as we're going through these, what is getting emphasized by the Lord or the author, and why are they putting it in a chiastic structure so that we get additional meaning out of it? All right, so this one is another psalm. It's quite long, and try to do this one as much as you can without hints. It is very tricky, but this is from Psalm 59, and we're gonna move on to the answer now. All right, so does this have positive or negative fins? What would you use to contrast the first half of it from the second half of it? Really dive in and think about this one. Now, this isn't the full excerpt of Psalm 59. We see here, I'm going to flip back and forth between these two slides to show you kind of what was cut out. So these are just the main points here, and here's the full Psalm 59. So I kind of sifted out some of the stuff so it wasn't as confusing to put together the chiastic structure, and then we can now read and study this psalm in its entirety. So what about the extra text? Does it give us any extra information? Does it have more function? Why wasn't some of that included in the chiastic structure? Think about that as we're studying and finding these chiasms all throughout the Old Testament. All right, now for the last part of class, we're going to be practicing. So we're going to practice writing and speaking in ABBA format. So tell us how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. If you need to write it down, but we're practicing out loud speaking in ABBA. Now it's not going to be ABCBA. We'll get more complex with our things in the future, but this is just 4 bullet points of how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So we talk about bread, then jelly, then peanut butter, then another piece of bread. It's A's are bread and B's are the filling, kind of a thing. So think of some more things that you can practice in an ABBA format. Now, we're going to practice. Describe your schedule from yesterday to us. One example was, I woke up, went to work, went home from work, and then went to bed, kind of a thing. So that works because both A's have to deal with a state of consciousness, and then both B's have to deal with travel. So you wouldn't have things that are A, B, C, and then A, because that wouldn't be a chiasm. You have to have A's match in principles, and also B's have to match. All right, so practice using those throughout your week. Start speaking and writing in ABBA format. When you're journaling, when you're talking with other people, try to be cognizant of how you can form your thoughts and words in that format. One thing we talked about in class was that as we start recognizing the Spirit more fully in our lives, we'll see how it is influencing us in a chiastic structure. Some days are chaotic and might not have that chiastic structure in it, but as you try to live by the Spirit, it will lead you in that pattern. And so as we start noticing when people speak by the Spirit, we can start noticing their chiastic structure to it and recognize it as being from the Spirit. All right, so from now on, we are going to have homework. And the homework's not required, obviously, but the more that you do, the more that you're going to get out of the next class. So next time, we are going to be diving into the Pearl of Great Price and comparing and contrasting the Genesis accounts chiastically, or the creation accounts, sorry, not just Genesis. So Genesis 1 and 2, Moses 1 and 3, Abraham 3 and 5, and then the endowment. So for the homework, there's 2 bullet points. It'd be great if you could chart out the days of creation in each version and compare and contrast them. We will be talking about it in class, so if you don't do it, that's fine. We still will be talking about it in class. But that's going to be very helpful as you're comparing the days across the different accounts and how that fits into their chiastic structure. Then find and mark both the macro and micro chiasms in each account. Now, I mean, that's what our whole class is going to be about next time. But if you could practice with it, you're going to be that much further ahead and being able to talk about it and contribute in class. All right. We'll see you next week.